Parshas Tzav, which actually comes out on the Kviyas of Yud Nissen, like this year, which the Rebbe points out a lot by that Farbrenegen. The amazing thing is, usually Shabbos Hagadol it was not established to celebrate an event that happens in the date of the month. It was only established on the Shabbos. But the date of the month is the 10th of Nisan. But in this Shabbos, we actually have that Shabbos Hagadol, what occurred on Shabbos Hagadol, actually took place on the very same date that we're celebrating it. In other words, this Shabbos is the 10th of Nisan. So we have this Kviyas that comes out the Shabbos Parshas Tzav. Concerning on the 10th of this month, that it says in Parshas Boy, that was the 10th of the month of this Furish B'Terish B'Ksav. It's explicit in Chumash. But also the 10th of this month, each celebrates every person should take a sheep for their household. Although this command was prior to going out of Mitzrayim and before Matan Torah, this comes down for all generations in a way of an everlasting statute, that you have something that comes out from this. Not necessarily that you have to prepare the sheep the way they did it, but something else. Not only concerning the time when the Beis Hamikdash stood. Then they would offer a carbon Pesach. So therefore, there was significance in the time before Pesach. Even during the time of exile. There is an entire chapter in Shulchan Aruch, chapter 430 in Shulchan Aruch concerning the laws of Shabbos Hagadol. Special halacha, special minhagim also in the time of Golus. And all of these minhagim came about as a result of the command that Moshe Rabbeinu was told in the 10th of this month, the Yidden should take and prepare a sheep for every household. So we see how ongoing this command is, that it impacts us even these days. Shabbos Shlifnei Pesach, Shabbos before Pesach, the Rebbe is quoting the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Currently, Shabbos Hagadol, we call it the Great Shabbos, because a great miracle occurred. The Pesach, the carbon Pesach in Mitzrayim, they had to purchase it on the 10th of the month. This wasn't necessarily all carbon Pesach, the one carbon Pesach in Mitzrayim. Like it says in Parshas Boy, but also the 10th of this month. Each celebrates always with Goyim, and they shall take for themselves every person a sheep for their household. That day, the 10th of Nisan, was Shabbos, just like the time when the Rebbe said the Sikha was the 10th of Nisan. In Shabbos came out the 10th of Nisan. How does it come out that Shabbos was the 10th? We know that on Thursday the Yidden left Mitzrayim. Since the 15th of Nisan, when they left Mitzrayim, was on Thursday. In Cain, if you calculate backwards, the 10th of Nisan, which was 5 days earlier, was therefore on Shabbos. And when the Yidden took to prepare their sheep on that Shabbos, the firstborn Egyptians gathered by the Yidden, and they asked him, "What are you doing?" So the Yidden told him, it is a carbon Pesach for Hashem, that he will kill the firstborn of the Mitzrayim. So the firstborn went to their fathers and to Pari to ask them to send out the Yidden, and their fathers and Pari did not want. And the firstborn went to war with the rest of Mitzrayim, and they killed many of them. We say this every Shabbos in what's called Hagadol, the one that plagues the Egyptians with their firstborn. It could have said he plagues the Egyptian firstborn. It didn't say that. It says he plagues the Egyptians through and with their firstborn. He used the firstborn to attack the Egyptians themselves. The Kavan Nazel is a Kavan Ladoris B'Shabbos, and they established this miracle to always be recalled on Shabbos before Pesach, B'Karu Shabbos Hagadol, and they called it the Great Shabbos. Even though this miracle took place on the 10th of the month, and normally in Bayidin, when do we establish commemorations of certain events? We don't establish it according to the day of the week. We establish it according to the date on the calendar, the month. Still in all, like they didn't just establish it on any 10th of Nisan, that they could have established it, they should have established it on the 10th of Nisan, regardless if it was a Shabbos or a weekday, just like all other Yom Tovim are established not according to the days of the week, but according to the days of the month. Rather, they established it in the Shabbos prior to Pesach. Like explains the reason. But on the other hand, since this miracle occurred in the 10th of the month, the movement it's understood. When the 10th of the month comes out on when Shabbos Hagadol comes out on the 10th of the month, like this year, Mudgish close everything is even more emphasized. Since that was the way it was the first time around. We're going to skip around a little bit. The Rebbe speaks about the great, powerful idea of this miracle, and the idea that we recall it, everything already starts, and everything that we recall is repeated, and it becomes a powerful hamshacha from the fact that we are now repeating it again. Let's go to line 26. Shabbos lifnei Pesach, koynos is Shabbos Hagadol. The Shabbos before Pesach, we call it the Great Shabbos, because a great miracle occurred. Therefore, we call it the Great Shabbos with the definitive hey, telling you the Great Shabbos. But this means to say that there is something special and unique about this miracle, that because of that, it's not just called a miracle. A lot of miracles took place, but this is called a great miracle. Even before it occurred, the miracle that he plagued the Egyptians with their firstborn. There were many different miracles. 10 miracles happened to our forefathers in Mitzrayim. All the 10 markets. That all of them there was a separation between the Yidden and Mitzrayim. This miracle that the Egyptians themselves were killed by the firstborn, it's not included in these 10 miracles. Because it's a special miracle, Godla greatness. So therefore, we need to understand that everyone wants to know what makes this so great more than any other type of miracle that preceded it. Top of the next page, the explanation this is how did we nullify? How did we break Egypt through the 10 makkahs that occurred through Hashem and Moshe? But the nullification, the break of the miracle of plaguing the Egyptians by their own firstborn. This was affected through the firstborn of the Egyptians themselves. Okay, as it's known, the firstborn, the eldest, indicates the power and the choices to the future generation of Egypt. The reason why the firstborn was a big deal, because firstborn shows on the major power, but it shows on strength and might and so on. Through the firstborn was affected the plaguing of the Egyptians themselves. Because the Egyptian firstborn themselves, the future of Egypt itself, went to war with Egypt. And that's why it's a great miracle. This means to say, the great miracle is expressed in the fact that the firstborn of Egyptians themselves, they use out their power and strength, being the firstborns, to the man from Parim, from all Mitzrayim, fulfill the command of the Eibishter and to send the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. To such a degree that they go into danger to fulfill this. Also, that the firstborn went to war. By knowing when you go to war, both sides have losses. It's not just the Egyptians that will suffer, but also the firstborn Egyptians. And they were so interested in it and so convinced to do this that because they went to war regardless. So then the Rebbe goes on, just say it outside, that it's very interesting about this pasuk. It says, "Lamakim Mitzrayim b'vchoreim." The pasuk, what's called Hagadol, the great Halal. That's Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav in Tehillim 136, and over there it says that the Eibishter did such and such. Then it says that the Lamakim Mitzrayim b'vchoreim ki loylam chazdoi. So the Rebbe says, if you go through the psukim in that kapitel, so that's the 10th Kiloim Chazd, it's the 10th pasuk that indicates, that hints on the idea of the 10th of the month. The Rebbe said he didn't see this anywhere, but this is an interesting hint. And the Rebbe goes on to say this even more emphasized in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, because in the Alter Rebbe Siddur, it's actually has included, since it's 26 Kiloim Chazdos, it's corresponding to the different letters of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, and by the 10th pasuk it says a little Yud, and by the 15th pasuk it says a Hey, and by the 21st pasuk it says a Vav, and then by the 26th pasuk it says the other Hey of Yud Kei Vav Kei. In other words, because this is something that Rebbe says, since the Alter Rebbe included it in the Siddur is connected with everybody, so therefore it's shaykh to everybody. So the fact that there's a Yud of Shem Havaya that in the Alter Rebbe Siddur placed right next to this Lamakim Mitzrayim b'vchoreim emphasizes again this idea that it's the 10th of the month. So, and the Rebbe says that in general this is connected with the idea of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Let's see the bottom of the page, line 33. Closing the Shem Havaya, the explanation of the connection of he slaughtered the Egyptians with their firstborn, with the general idea of Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. Moshe and Aaron came to Pari. They told him, so Havaya said, send out my nation. Pari looked in all of his books of idols, and he said, I do not know Havaya. His only familiarity was with the name Elokim. Like it says, Elokim Yanesh Loim Pari, that Elokim will respond and proclaim the peace of Pari. So therefore, Pari by himself did not have any connection with Shem Havaya. As opposed to that, the firstborn of Mitzrayim come. They are demanding from Parai to do this, not what Shem Malakim stated, but what Moshe and Aaron said, there's a tzivui havavaya, to send out my nation. Not only should Parai not stand in the way of Yidden going on in Mitzrayim, even more so. Shapari asked me, that Parai himself will send them out. And he will assist them and help them to go out in Mitzrayim. And this actually took place, that Parai himself was involved in sending the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. Like it says, Bishalach Parai Yisrael. It doesn't say when Parai released them or freed them. He says when Parai sent out the nation. Not only did Parai not mix it and did not prevent the Yidden from going out of Mitzrayim, Ella Adra, but just the opposite. Parai asked me, Sholach is Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim. Parai himself sent the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. And he assisted them to go out of Mitzrayim as quickly as possible. If there would have been for those fools that didn't want to go out of Mitzrayim, with a mighty hand he will send them, or with a mighty hand he will chase them out of their land, out of his land. All of this occurred through the plague of the firstborn. Since Parai himself was a firstborn. And he was worried that he's also going to die. That's why he rushed to quickly send them from the land before the plague hits him as well. But as a preface to even this occurring, there was the idea that the Egyptians were killed by their own firstborn. That the firstborn of Mitzrayim went to war with Parai to force him to send the Yidden out of Mitzrayim to fulfill the command of Hashem. This general idea of Parai sending out the nation, that Parai himself assist the Yidden to go out of Golus, began already before the Gul. When the end of the exile arrived on the 15th of Nisan, and this very day, over then there was already no delay whatsoever, not even like on the Ibli. Was Mitzrayim. And then they already left Mitzrayim. So it's not possible to say that on the 15th during the day, Parai sent them out. They were already on the way out. Move on from this is understood. In the Bishal Parai the idea that Parai sent out the nation before they went out of Mitzrayim. Hischel Lifnei began even prior to going out of Mitzrayim. It happened already at midnight. When there was the plague of the firstborn, like it says, and Parai rose up at night. And they called to Moshe at night. He was running around all the entrances of the city and was crying out, "Where's Moshe?" And he said, said, "Rise up and go out." Then it's a move on, and similar to this is understood. The fact where it says that the Eibishter commanded the Yidden that every man should borrow from his fellow and every woman should borrow from her fellow silver vessels and golden vessels in such a way that you will empty out Mitzrayim. All this took place before the Geula. Already before the redemption, the Egyptians lent the Yidden silver and gold vessels. Especially according to explanation that this borrowing was in the way of a gift. The Mitzrim gave the Yidden silver vessels and gold vessels so they should go out of Mitzrayim. Al derech and move on, similar to this understood. This miracle of plaguing the Egyptians with their firstborn was affected before the redemption. And Gam Kasher Bnei Yisrael Begos Mitzrayim, also when the Yidden were in the exile from Mitzrayim, Nifok Vara Inyan Dulamakim Mitzrayim, Aidei B'chareim was already affected the idea that the Egyptians were plagued through their firstborn, Shem Darshim Paril Sayel Bnei Yisrael Lotis Mitzrayim, as he demanded from the Paroi that he should assist the Yidden to go out of Mitzrayim. Zo Klolos Inyan the Neis Gadol. That is the general idea of the great miracle. Shagoy Atzma Yedea, that the guy himself knows that his job and his mission is live for al goy sheni sheisayel mitzvot snagolos, to affect another guy that he should help the Yidden go out of Golos. One guy tells the other guy, send out the Yidden. Like we said before, this is affected even when Yidden are found in the time of exile before the redemption. There is a movement, so too it's understood concerning our goals. The above mentioned matters already affected even before the future redemption. Because the future redemption will be like similar to the days of you're going out of Mitzrayim. Now the Rebbe says in a practical way, there's our own physical Mitzrayim, which the Rebbe is going to explain means involving ourselves in worldly things, that it has to be in such a way that we feel that our involvement in making a living and so on is something that's a Mitzrayim for us, and we can't wait to go out of that limitation. Zion, line 25. The lesson from the general idea that he plagued the Egyptians with their firstborn, the service of the person. Like we spoke about many times, that every person has to know that the intention is this person himself. Mitzrayim indicates a service of Hashem in a way that's measured and has boundaries. Mitzrayim from the word constraints and boundaries. Ulamatim is even lower than this. Mitzrayim Eloshim Mitzirim LiYisrael. Mitzrayim is from the word those that oppress you. From the word Tzav. Hainu, this means Hais Askus bin Yonim Shemitzad Atzmam Mitzirim LiYisrael. What does Mitzrayim indicate in a Yid service? Being involved in such matters that on their own they are oppressing Yid. What type of matters are on their own oppressing Yid? Birbazad explanation. This is. There are times throughout the day that during the times of the day, a person is involved in worldly matters. These matters, this means to say, instead of the fact that he would have been able to study Torah, to fulfill mitzvahs, and to be involved in the avoid of davening, he takes a certain portion of the day, of the hours of the day, to be involved in worldly matters, like the Eibishter calls them, your actions, your ways. Like it says, though his involvement in worldly matters is according to Torah. The Torah allows him to reserve and set aside time for being involved in worldly matters. So he should be able to support his wife and children. Then there's a command in the Torah that the husband is obligated to take care of his wife's needs. So therefore he has to, Alpi Torah, go out to work. Apple became still in all. His involvement with worldly matters is in such a way that it's considered oppressive. Because the true place of every single Yid is in the 4 cubits of Torah and davening. As opposed to his involvement in worldly matters in such a way that he goes out of his true place. Like it says about Zvulun, who was known for his business, You're going out. He's going out of what a true place of a Yid is. Moving the Parshas, like it's simply understood. When he's involved in worldly matters, he can't devote himself to Torah study with understanding and comprehension. The way it's appropriate for a Yid, that's part of the wise and understanding nation. So it's a matter. This means to say, top of the next page. Though a Yid was created by the Eibishter in a way of a soul and a body, with the limitations of the nature of the body, and that is why that's why he has permission. He's allowed to be involved in making a living by the laws and rules of nature. Despite the fact that he needs to do so, the matter does not cause him any joy. He's not happy going out to work. But just the opposite. He feels these mundane and physical things that he has to do to make a living, that it's oppressive to the Yidden. That's his own personal Mitzrayim. He's going to work only because he's like coerced to do so, without any heart involved in it. We'll say kapecha with a chaf, not a base. In a way of the toil of your palms only, not yigir reshecha, like we know that Rebbe always speaks about it. By knowing that the need to be involved in worldly matters, it's only because we're still in the time of Golas. What's going to be when Mashiach comes? We're not going to have to go worry about making a living. Yid will be fulfilled the promise that others, foreigners, goyim, will arise, and they will take your sheep out to graze, to pasture. And therefore, Yid will be able to devote his entire time to studying Torah and doing mitzvahs and davening. Therefore, second paragraph, Yisrael's involvement in worldly matters is in such a way that he feels that it's oppressing Yid. Because it's done out of heartache. He's pained over the fact, why didn't we not yet merit fulfillment of the promise that foreigners will arise and they will take your sheep out to graze? That for this reason, you need to do it on their own. So now that we've established what is Mitzrayim in a Yid's day-to-day life, now we're going to explain what is in our daily life, the Lamakim Mitzrayim B'Chareim, that the firstborn, the power of Mitzrayim, is the one that overcomes it and plagues us. For this comes the lesson of he plagued the Egyptians with their firstborn. Even when a Yid is involved in worldly matters, in matters of Mitzrayim that they oppress the Yid, how does he have to go to work? How does he have to do his involvement in the world in such a way that the Egyptians themselves are plagued by their firstborn? He uses the worldly matters for the sake of the service of the Eibishter. All your actions should be for the sake of heaven. All your ways you should know him. That's the general idea of plaguing the Egyptians with their firstborn. Even when his involvement in worldly matters, Egypt is in such a way of great success. That's why they're B'chorim Mitzrayim, the next generation, they're powerful. It doesn't affect him that he sinks himself in, that he drowns himself, that he invests himself in his business in a very great manner. Just the opposite. The idea of the firstborn of the Egyptians itself is used out for increasing and adding the service of Hashem. The Parshas simply put, the way I was involved in worldly matters is in the way that he feels forced, without any heart. Only the toil of his hands, not his mind. His mind is reserved for holy things. Because even when he's involved in worldly matters, what is he thinking about? Words of Torah, Nigla Torah, the revealed part of Torah, the inner part of Torah, Torah Chassidus. Every person according to his measure. You do a Sibra Chassidim, Oidus Ram Nechemim, the Baravna, like it's known, but Chassidim tell about the Alter Rebbe's Chassid known as Ram Nechemia of the Baravna. Ram Nechemia, Isaac Binyan in Mispar, Talisas V'chulu. Ram Nechemia was involved in business things, manufacturing, talis. Kasher Orach Pam Cheshm Binyan HaMischar, once when he made an accounting and a calculation of his business, and you reach the bottom line that you had to have the sum total of this calculation. Kosovo, he wrote, there's nothing besides the Eibush. When you move him a Parshas, it's self-understood. Nechemia was not doing this to show himself off, heaven forbid. But rather, this is what he actually felt. The sum total of the entire calculation in matters of business is not, there's nothing besides the Eibush. So I said, matters, this means to say, though it's referring to making a calculation in business matters, Rishimus Misparim, writing down numbers, not letters in Lashon Kodesh that their gematria fits into numbers, but he actually wrote numbers in numerals. The way it's written, numbers by all nations, not just Yidden that know the meaning of the letters for the numerical calculation. Moving, it's understood. When you make a calculation, it has to be exact. A person's business dealing has to be faithful. You cannot just write things down and not have a calculation. Pashta simply put, why does a person make a calculation? Either you need to know how much to pay another, or you need to know how much he's owed, etc. Alpha became, despite all of this, Kosa B'Sachakal, he wrote in the sum total, Ein Noid Movadi, there's nothing besides the Eibush. Because the general idea that there's nothing besides him was so permeating him, until it even expressed itself also in business. That their content and the sum total is there's nothing besides the Eibush. That's the general idea of plaguing the Egyptians with their firstborn, the service of a Yid to the Eibishter. He uses the idea of business and worldly matters in such a way that for the service of Hashem, in such a manner, all his workers in his business, how much more so his family members. They sense and feel that the sum total of the general business is there's nothing besides the Eibishter. That concerning the idea of the general idea of the body, eating and drinking, etc. The Rebbe goes on these days. The Alter Rebbe says we're not supposed to fast. We're supposed to make sure to take care of our health, and we're supposed to eat. But still, in all, he knows as general involvement in bodily things. Top of page Lamed is in a way of mitzidim li Yisrael. It's in a way that's considered oppressing Yidden. Why? Only because the limitations of the body does he need to eat. He doesn't eat because he wants to eat, but he's coerced into eating because his body needs it. Because he's recognizing that he's only eating because his body needs it. His service in such a way that he plagues the Egyptians with their firstborn. He uses matters in Mitzrayim and the firstborn of Mitzrayim itself for the sake of avodas Hashem. The general idea of being involved in sustenance, being involved in business, the Revichi, it's true, it's no way of being comfortable. Skip over to line 4, end of the line. All this occurs in a way of plaguing the Egyptians with their firstborn. He uses out these matters for the service of the Eibishter. This is affected through the firstborn of the Egyptians. Skip the parentheses. This way of acting, skip the parentheses again. It's not just from the perspective of the godly soul. My son, my firstborn, which is Yisrael, which is Nefesh Elokis. It's also from the perspective of the intellect of Nefesh Bahamis, which is B'chori Mitzrayim. They are also that way. Point what we said earlier, moving, it's understood, Shemedei Shana B'Shana, every single year. There's the empowerment of the general avodah of plaguing the Egyptians with their firstborn. Especially the setup of this year, that the 10th of the month comes out on Shabbos. The way the setting of the calendar was the first time around when they were going out of Mitzrayim in the year 2448. And this avodah of using out all the physical, not for their own sake, not because he enjoys the physical, but he's using it out for Kedusha. This itself is done out of delight. Why is that done out of delight? Because we're taking energy from Shabbos that's about delight. Shabbos, who Inyan HaTainug, since the general idea of Shabbos is in a way of delight. Now that I was going to say, when we do this in ourselves, this impacts the rest of the world. And this causes that the rest of the world as well has this type of idea, that the rest of the world now pushes us out of Golos and fights with those that don't want to let us go out of Golos. Shabbos is time. So therefore, all of this is done out of time. This avodah of Lamak Mitzrayim B'Chareim. Line 13. Since the avodah, the Chazal say, first beautify yourself and then beautify others. Moving is understood. When a person's own service in his own personal life is in such a way that he plagues the Egyptians with their firstborn, and that affects that the entire world is in such a way that the firstborn and the power of the world is what's pushing us out of goals. He says in line 16, this means even when Yidden are found in a time of exile, before the end arrives, has already affected the idea that I will plague the Egyptians with their firstborn. This means that the nations of the world know, just like we said, B'Shalach Pari meant that he knew that his job was to kick the Yidden out of Golos. The same thing, the nations of the world know that their job and their mission is to assist Yidden in all their matters. Even when Yidden are found in the latter days of goals, of our goals, they find themselves in such a state and situation, like it says by Makas Choshev, that all the Yidden, they had light in their dwellings, despite the fact that they were still in the time of exile, in their settlements in the land of Mitzrayim. When the darkness covers the land, to all the Yidden there was light in their settlements. Speedily all the Yidden go out of Golos before the days of Pesach. And automatically we celebrate the Yom Tov Pesach in the state and situation of redemption. We will eat over there in Yerushalayim from the Korban Shlamim, the Korban Pesach, the Kula Mitzvah Shlema, the Mashiach Tzedkenu, and the true and complete redemption through Mashiach, with our youth and our elderly, and our sons and our daughters.
Amen, amen for that.